Hi, good morning everyone. This is a get to know me video. I think I've only done maybe 1 or 2 of these. I think I have about 900 videos out there in the last 8 years. So this is a little bit of information to get to know my personal life. I was born in Manassas, and the best parts of my life was in Winchester, Virginia. They're known for the apples. We lived in a farmhouse that had no electricity and no running water, and of course no bathroom. So we had a 2-holer in the backyard, and in order to get water, we had to pump it out of the well in the backyard and bring it in. In order for me and my sister to bathe, my mother had to boil the water on a wood stove. Now, if you don't know what a wood stove is, it's not electric. Remember, we had no electricity. She had to fill up the wood stove with wood, get that hot, boil the water, and then put that in a big galvanized tub. And that's how my sister and I bathed. I remember many mornings, of course, when you have a wood stove, you have to get up before everybody else. I remember cracking walnuts. I remember asking my daddy, he says, "What do you want?" I said, "I want a squirrel's tail." He was out hunting because we owned 300 acres. So he would bring me back a squirrel's tail. Now, those were the toys that I played with as a young child. I loved that farmhouse so much. And I remember going to sleep at night, listening to the whippoorwills and the frogs. Let me tell you what, if that doesn't lull you to sleep, I don't know what would, because I still remember those nights. And I remember we had a huge barn, and we would get up in the top of the hayloft and we would jump down. And I remember my mother had a cow that was always kicking her because she was always covered in bruises, the poor thing. And whenever we got hungry, we didn't go to the grocery store because my daddy was working in Northern Virginia. We didn't have a car. There was no phones. There were no cell phones. There were no internet. This is back in the 50s now. When we got hungry, my mother had to go to the chicken coop with a hatchet, and I had to, of course, help her. We had to cut the chicken's head off, and then my mother had to, I think, boil the chicken in order to get the feathers off. I think that's how it worked. I can remember churning butter, and I think I was sometimes hungry back then. And I remember we got some apples, some beautiful red apples in the mail, and I remember being so hungry that I devoured both of them. And I remember finding some chocolate on top of my mother's, I guess it was like a refrigerator, and I ate it, and my mother goes, "Okay, you just ate a whole bunch of X-Lax, a laxative." Of course, I didn't know what that was. Well, I found out. Let's see, what else can I remember? I remember riding bareback, full gallop at 6 years old. I don't know how many of you all have done that, but I wouldn't even think of getting on a horse nowadays. No, I don't know. Back then, parents weren't as paranoid as they are now. And I remember walking almost a mile or 2 miles to my friend's house who had horses. And it was nothing. It was nothing back then to do that, to let your child do that. I was the last house on the bus stop. And I remember being on the bus, it seems like forever. It seems like there was a lot of hunters back then. And my daddy, I hate to say this because I didn't know it at the time, but he had a full-size barn just for chicken fighting, you know. And I remember as a young girl seeing stacks of money with a bunch of men standing around this ring with It was raked out very smooth. I remember that, and I remember it was a circle ring. There was a snack bar, and I remember the chickens were piled up, you know, like 6 foot high of the dead ones, because after they fought, because they have those little metal spurs, sharp as can be. After they did their fight, you know, they had to wring their necks and put them in this pile. I never knew what they did with all them. I don't know, I hope somebody buried them. I don't know, but this was my childhood. I was a tom girl for sure. So any of you guys out there who think I'm a girly girl, you are so wrong, because let me tell you what, I can run a chainsaw. I can run a bush hog. I can run a tractor. I have no trouble running heavy equipment. I've done it many times. Of course, when you own a tree company and you're starting out, you're the labor, you see what I'm saying? So let's see. What else can I say? I know when my daddy finally came up on the weekends, it was a big extravaganza to see him. He was very handsome. He was just as handsome as Elvis, you know. And I remember the best Christmas I ever had was, I guess this was before my brother was born. I had 2 sisters at that time. And then my brother would be born, and then another sister after him. But I remember my mother sitting at the table, and I don't know where she got this, but this is how I became a Christmas nut. And she had this paper, something like a coloring book. I don't know, paper dolls was very in back then, and we cut out these reindeer, all of Santa's reindeer, and we stood them up. And that is when I got so excited that, number one, she was spending time with me, because she had other things she could have been doing. And the fact that I had something colorful to look at. And from then on, I became a Christmas nut. I mean, I go all out for Christmas. Now, I don't do that anymore, but yeah, that was my best Christmas. And I remember as like a 3rd and 4th grader, I would go out in the woods and get holly trees and get pine trees. Now, this is when I was just a little girl. I had that Martha Stewart in me, right? Because my family calls me that sometimes. I would spray paint this gold, silver. I would go get holly berries, and I would arrange them for displays on the table. And when I became an adult, I used to make wreaths for people out of silk flowers. I mean, I just love that kind of stuff. I don't do it anymore, sadly, but I always had that decorating spirit in me. It came natural. I didn't have any classes or anything. It just came natural to me. So I hope you enjoyed this video about my early life. Bye.